This is going to be over. Lions are going to win it. Lions are bringing the NFC North title back to Detroit.
All right, what's happening, everybody? Little lunchtime stream here. Wanted to pop up and just talk a little bit about this Kindle Vildor resigning and kind of what it means right now with the way the Lions have handled this offseason. I want to pop something in the poll here real quick. Give me 1 second. All right. So I want to know how you guys feel about the Lions' upcoming draft opportunities and the current offseason, how they've handled it, how they've done. There's some things that I've come across that I've read that, I mean, it's different this year. That's all I'm going to say. It's different. And Dan Campbell, obviously, Brad Holmes, obviously agree that they're in the best position they've ever been in now in year 4. The one thing that I spoke to a lot about last year, even while we were winning, you know, meant by that is we were 1 draft away, and it was the way we were winning. Quite honestly, the way that, you know, they handled themselves in tight games, or when games were starting to kind of close up on them, they really turned a corner this last year. And I know it didn't end where a lot of us thought the season was going to go. You know, once we hit the playoffs and started to win, I think everybody felt it. It just it didn't finish the way that we had hoped, and that just leaves, you know, more opportunity for us this season. As hard as it is going to be to get back, but the reason why I wanted to jump in and do this is because being a half a season away, you know, midway through last year, and knowing that we just needed a few more draft picks that Brad, you know, Holmes could find to help this team for the long term. One, it helps the cap. You know, it keeps the cap fluid and keeps it lower. And 2, you know, he's been really good at finding these Bulldogs, man, that just come in and play hard. And that's, I don't know what just happened there. And that's very difficult for any GM to do, is to hit on more than 60% success rate for starters. Not just 60% success rate to land on your team and stick with the team after the draft and after cuts, because you'll see teams that draft guys that don't even make the team. But just about everybody has made the team. Let's see, besides, I think it was Jamar Jefferson and James Houston that got cut initially but brought back, and Jamar got brought back. Outside of that, I don't think that we've ever had really anybody that didn't make the team, at least initially. And so now you've got Kindle Vildor coming back. Now, there was a little bit of discrepancy the last couple of weeks between Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. Dan felt that, they needed another corner. He wanted camp competition, and he felt like that room needed more. And Brad had said in a media availability on the 26th of March that he felt that cornerback wasn't a need anymore. Whether they're, playing, smokescreen season, that's the first time I've ever heard them not be on the same page. Could be a new level up for them to be playing this game a little bit more risky, if you will. But anyway, we see Kindle Vildor come back, and I'm sure a lot of fans were like, oh no, like, come on, really? The guy that bounced it off his face in the NFC title game, and, that's what everyone thinks is just that. But there's more to Kindle Vildor. There really is. And I know he had some terrible grades. I forgot to pull this up. Let me pull it up. Because I wanted to at least share with you guys a few things about Kindle Vildor that, one, I expected him to hit free agency and come back, or at least have an opportunity to come back. That's what I posted a while back, and it's happened. And I felt like he deserved it because he did play pretty good at times. He played pretty poorly at times too. But there's one thing that he did, well, two things he did really, really well. And this is exactly what the Lions want on their team, is someone that plays the run defense well and someone that plays the pass rush plays well. Let me throw this up on here for you guys. Oh, that looks very small. Hold on. Oh, there we go. That's a little big. Okay. So he didn't have blazing stats or anything, right? 10 tackles, 15 targets, 9 receptions allowed. And that's the number that I think that everyone was kind of worried about right here was, more than half of the targets, are being caught. And I think the other number that was alarming is down here, the passer rating allowed. I mean, he made every quarterback look like an MVP. And that's the most alarming thing, right? And then the second most alarming thing is how many yards per reception, 21.7. I mean, it's god awful. It's terrible. But when you look at what was around him, and I think that's what we have to look at, what was around Kindle Vildor? Cam Sutton wasn't playing well. GJ wasn't in there, and even when he wasn't playing well. Ifeatu Melifonwu, Brian Branch were probably the two best DBs we had last year. And Kirby Joseph at times was great. At other times, he was off the map too. He wasn't playing very well. I mean, none of our DBs really collectively had a great season. It was not a great season combined. Separately, some of them had pretty good years. But nobody really impressed, to the tune of being a starter other than, in my opinion, Brian Branch. I mean, from darn near snap one, the guy picks off Mahomes, and that's how he started his career in the NFL with the Detroit Lions, was a pick six. It doesn't get any better than that. So talking about Kindle Vildor here, this is why I'm cool with this. Like, I am totally on board with this, and it's right here. His run defense grade, amazing, 83.7. His pass rush grade, so his help in pass rush, him coming off the edge as needed, protecting in pass rush, so when your defensive line is rushing the quarterback and he's in coverage, he did very well. Now, regular coverage, not so great, 50.5. His overall grade, not so great. The thing I question PFF with is if I were to average just these three numbers, I'm pretty sure that doesn't average 56.8. I could be wrong, but I don't think it does. So the numbers don't really ever make sense with PFF. I think that's what everyone's gripe is lately with PFF. Sometimes it just doesn't add up. And that's why this is more of a guide than anything. And watching, the tape and reviewing the games in depth by each player matters more than anything. So what I'm going to guess here, right? I'm going to speak for what the Lions probably saw out of Kindle Vildor is he is somebody that can be highly trusted in the run defense game. So in our nickel situations and our dime situations, because he's probably not going to be out there. I mean, this is clearly a camp move at this point. Someone to bring in for camp competition, training camp, an extra body in there, but somebody that also has really, really good experience. And he does. I mean, he's got what, five years of experience, I think now. So this is a great move to solidify depth. Number one. Number two, it's someone that is familiar with the defense. And we bring in two new guys, with Amik and Carlton that are going to elevate the room overall. Brian Branch stepping into his second year, man. They always talk about the sophomore slump. I don't see that with Brian. He's too heady of a player. He's too smart. He's too physical. I really believe that he's going to have a great second season. I don't know why my chat's not popping up on the YouTube side, but I just see you guys send in some chats here. I'll come right back to it here in just a moment. So actually, I'm going to start with this one. Run DMG. Love the name, man. DMC would have been better. How can you not love that music from back in the day? Says this signing gives Brad 100% freedom to go BPA in any of his picks. We will eventually lose some players because we're good. Now he gets to draft depth, but replacement for future. Perfect statement, man. Absolutely perfect statement. And for me, that's why I wanted to jump into this, because for the first time since taking over as general manager, and for the first time in a long time, here, I'm going to get this off. We don't really need to discuss Kindle Vildor much anymore. The first time since 2021, Brad Holmes is not picking in the top 10 yet. And I say yet because I think that there's an opportunity for him to move up to the top 12. 12 has been the magic number for Brad Holmes, especially when he only has, 12 or 14 or 16 first round grades on guys. He knows where he needs to be to get his guy, or at least the best overall guy and on his board. Right. But a couple weeks ago in Orlando, Brad Holmes had said that this changes nothing. They're still going to go into this draft doing what they've always done. And even Dan Campbell had mentioned that the pre-draft process and the work that they've been putting in preparing for the draft is the same as it's always been. And so to its, the philosophy that they follow, the style that they follow, the process that they implement is always to take best player available on their board. And I want to make sure that is clear. It's not best player available on PFF's board or, Mel Kiper's board or Daniel Jeremiah's board or my board or, anybody else's board. None of those boards matter. They assemble their board. I mean, we've seen it, with Hard Knocks, they're putting up all the plaques of the names. I would love to be able to have something like that. That'd be kind of cool. It's their board. And if they feel like there's a player they need to go up and get, then they're going to go up and get them. And this draft is no different for that. So here's a quote by Dan Campbell. He said, since we've been here, we've really, it's draft the best player available. I love Dan Campbell's quotes. They're so hard to read. So bear with me. It says, don't let the man, he says, don't let the man, we absolutely have to have a linebacker. We absolutely have to have a blank. Just go with what you believe is going to fit your team and what you feel like is the best player at the time. And this is the philosophy that's been, very advantageous, speaking from Tim Twentyman's article here, for Holmes and Campbell, given the current state of the roster in 2024 and the first wave of free agency. The Lions address needs at cornerback with obviously Davis and Robertson. They re-signed Emmanuel Mosley. Now they've brought back Kindle Vildor. The defensive line got DJ Reader and Marcus Davenport. So he went in and filled a large pot of needs, more so than what he did in 23 through free agency, which is typically the plan by most teams, is utilize free agency to fill your holes. Some teams, Chicago Bears, fill their complete roster, whether it's a need or not, with free agency and just spend tons of money in trading up or trading out of assets, draft capital that can hurt your future. And I have no clue like what Ryan Poles is thinking, but I really don't care. I hope he fails over there. I mean, that's just sorry. I mean, I want the Lions to win. So keep doing what you're doing, Poles, because I feel like it's going to blow up. Could be wrong, but we haven't seen it yet either. But this to somebody else's point in here, it says, and this is Caleb Klein, says this opens up a trade to get Dallas Turner. And the other day in my mock, I had us moving up to 12 with Denver, because Denver is in such a critical need for draft picks because they don't have money, spending all this money on Russell Wilson, dead money too. It's money that doesn't help them. That's a team that you can prey on right now. Maybe try to fleece them a little bit. And there's relationships there too, though, so there's relationships with the Lions and Denver that are pretty strong. And I feel like that, that's an angle that they're going to work in this draft. Craig Hogue says Brad Holmes is making this exciting, irritating, fantastic, and confusing as hell. I love it. As Brad Holmes, man, that should be on a t-shirt. It should be a picture of Brad that says confusing, irritating, frustrating. I love it. That's a great t-shirt. Devin Bynum says Vildor's been solid. Continuity in football player is key. Continuity in football players is key for 2024. Is Will Harris on the roster still? So no, Will Harris was a free agent. So I don't believe that he's anywhere near this roster. I don't think he's coming back at all. I hope not. I hope not. I mean, that is one player, not to be negative, but that is one player that has just not played well ever since he's been in Detroit. But he does certain things well. Again, I think he does pretty well in run defense, but not near as good as what Kindle Vildor did. And I think there's two things that this defense really stresses, and that is to stop the run. Number one, like that is a huge stress point between AG and now the new defensive line coach is they have to continue on with what they did in 2023. They can't, where we were strong, they can't walk back from that now. They have to continue forward in the plan of we've got to be strong on offense. We've got to be able to run the ball. We have to be able to pass with conviction, utilize play action. And on the other side of the ball, we have to stop the run. And now there's an emphasis to add another component to that, which is limit the pass. But you have to stop the run. You have to do what you do well first. And that's what I spoke about, last night or this morning, I think is when it released, about the best move with Ben Johnson coming back, but even AG and Dave Phipp and, bringing all of our coaches back. So that's huge to have the same team of coaches for 4 seasons. Huge. It doesn't happen very often in the NFL. You speak of continuity, not just with the players, but now our coaches are walking into this like they can read each other's minds now. They know what to do. And that's going to be dangerous for the rest of the NFL in 2024. I certainly believe it. So I wanted to go through the roster a little bit because to the first point that someone made, it's imperative now. Well, I was run DMG. It's imperative now that, Brad Holmes has flexibility and he's going to utilize this flexibility to do whatever he has to do to make this team better. And it's not just depth pieces he's looking for. He wants, leaders and guys that can help this team win, but guys that play hard and love football. And that's what this draft is all about this year, even more so than I think the previous seasons, that, they're really honing in on the right targets. And this draft is funny this year. It's kind of all over the place. Like you've got like little pots of, real solid availability for players. And then it's like a rash of emptiness, in my opinion, from my assessment. But some of those players are going to jump up and surprise us. They will. It happens every year. You have some 4th, 5th, and 6th rounders that just end up being amazing players. I mean, we've seen it on our own team. So St. Brown's a good example of that. Brent, to your point, he says our young players will be awesome this year. I really believe in that. I do. I think the Lions do very well at coaching up and developing their young players. And that's also the reason why bringing in some veteran leadership is so important, because it's a give and a take. You've got that young guy that wants to come in with all the fresh legs and the fresh ideas and, just wants to get at it. And it takes a good veteran leader to kind of slow him down to say, we got to do things the right way first. And that comes from the coaches on down. We got to do things the right way first. And then we pick up the speed. Mechanics is always number one. Doing things the right way is always number one. And then you incrementally, get faster with it. Muscle memory starts to work in your favor. And that's what developing does. And I think that our Detroit Lions organization is probably one of the best at developing our young players. I mean, you look at the rookies that we bring in, and you're starting, 2, 3, 4, 5 rookies in a season from the draft, and how well they've played. I've never seen that before. And not just Detroit. Like, I've never seen that before. And maybe it's happened, but Caleb Klein says Dallas Turner is the Micah Parsons. Is like Micah Parsons. Great fit with Hutch, just like Hutch and Ajabo. I do like Dallas Turner. Quite honestly, I had him projected at the Lions the other night in my mock draft at 12. And he, in my opinion, is probably the best edge rusher in this draft. Measurements off the chains. His athleticism is really good. He comes from a high pedigree. I think that if you can somehow finagle your way to get Dallas Turner, that's a game changer. But the problem is giving up the assets to do it. And I just don't know if that's Brad Holmes' MO this year or not. I don't know. I don't know. Detroit Fan Man says Dallas Turner loses so many one-on-ones. Seems like a guy who is a great athlete, just not a fighter. I didn't see that out of his tape. I'll review his tape again tonight. Maybe we'll watch it together, since I don't monetize, the live streams that we do at night until after. Maybe we'll look at some ads. We'll look at some clips, and then we'll cut it out. Brent says Jack Campbell will do so much better. He showed signs of it last year. Jack is going to have a great second season. I believe in that too. So let's talk about this roster for a moment. Here's what we're looking like on defense. So defensive end, you've got Davenport on one side, Hutchinson on the other. Then you got Pascal behind Hutch and Kaminsky behind Davenport. And then you've got James Houston behind Pascal and Mitchell Agudi behind John Kaminsky. And then somewhere you have Matu Betts behind everybody else. We have 7 defensive ends right now. 7. Which means we do not need a defensive end, technically. So if we get a defensive end early in this draft, someone's going to be the odd man out here. And I would say initially, without going to any camps or seeing these guys play, it's probably Mitchell Agudi would be the odd man out right now. But he could end up back on the practice squad. Best edge in the draft, Brent, to me is Dallas Turner. Marshawn Nealon, I like him. Again, freak athlete, great body. His measurements, everything are all great. Where you could pick him, I think, is the biggest question that people are trying to answer is, he's a local product. So how much attention did he really get from other teams? I don't know that answer. I did try to reach out to his camp to get him on. I haven't heard back. So I wanted to ask him those questions. How many teams were interested in you? I could go and look at all of the top 30 visits for every team and to see if he's on it. But that's going to be the first question, is how many teams really looked at Marshawn Nealon, because he's in our backyard. And this college season, I'm going to try to get to more local college games and do some self-scouting. so that I can, have some better information on players when we get to this time next year for the draft. So can we get a great edge in the second round? 1,000%. I just think that pick 61 is a little late. And that could be Marshawn Nealand. If he lasts that long, if he lasts to 61 and you don't take an edge first, then yeah, I would say that you pick him up. I wouldn't know who else you would want to pick up there unless it's a receiver. But see, that's the whole thing with this. Like, it is so confusing to whoever made that point earlier. It's irritating. It's frustrating because Brad Holmes is now just completely slam dunked this draft. Like, he's got this team set, and there's really not a glaring hole anywhere outside of the guys that are rehabbing from injury, like DJ Reader, Emmanuel Mosley. So anyway, back to the roster here. So we're set at defensive end technically right now. We have 7. Forgive me if I don't remember correctly, but I believe that we entered 2023 with 12 defensive linemen, mixture of defensive ends and defensive tackles. I think it was 12. And we went light on offensive linemen. I think we entered 53-man cuts with 8. So between offensive and defensive line, we had 20 players set aside at the 53-man cuts. So, but this year now we have DJ Reader as our number 1 nose, and Tyson Alualu. I don't know why he's still on the roster. And we have Broderick Martin. Did we re-sign? Did I miss the Tyson Alualu or Alualu signing? Did I miss that? Or I mean, am I missing something here? I guess this depth chart could be wrong because I'm not looking at the Lions because the Lions one is never up to date. But if anybody knows, because I mean, it's possible that I missed something. I miss stuff all the time. But I thought we only picked him up at the last. Yeah, we picked him up for the last few games of the season, and he would have been a free agent come the new league year. So I don't know why he's listed. I really don't. But anyway, we got DJ Reader and Broderick Martin. And then at defensive tackle, we have Ali McNeil, Levi Onwuzurike, and Chris Smith. So if I were to make a guess right now, Reader, McNeil, Onwuzurike, and Broderick Martin are the 4 that are going to make it. So if you have 4 there, and you're probably going to have, I mean, you could have 7 defensive ends and probably keep 5 defensive tackles if they're going to roll with 12 again this year. So, you'd have Davenport, Kaminsky, Reader, Martin, Ali McNeil, Levi, Hutchinson, Pascal, Houston, Betts. That's 10. So, I mean, there's room. I mean, that's losing Chris Smith and Mitchell Agudi. If that's how you pronounce his name, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 13 guys that we have already. So who is the other guy? And Tyson, that would be the other one that would be, the odd man out. So in other words, I mean, even if we did absolutely nothing there other than re-sign Tyson, I think that we're pretty solid. And I think that we're better than we were last year. 1,000% better. So at the linebacker position, man, this is probably one of our better areas, but Alex Anzalone, Jalen Reeves-Maybin, Malcolm Rodriguez, I mean, all studs. Reeves-Maybin has really made a leap in his progression. I think he got overpaid, but look, the guy's worth it now because the kickoff rules have changed. Derek Barnes and then Jack Campbell. So, I mean, we've got a pretty solid, we could use one more linebacker. We really could. So I could see a linebacker, defensive end, somewhere on the board for us. And then at left cornerback, we got Carlton Davis. Behind him, you got Emmanuel Mosley, Khalil Dorsey, and Craig James. And then at right cornerback, you've got Amik Robertson, Kindle Vildor now, and Stephen Gilmore. So between the right and the left cornerback, you have 7 guys. And then when you throw in the safeties, you've got only one strong safety, Kirby Joseph. So Ifiatu Melifonwu, Kirby Joseph, Brandon Joseph. And then at nickelback, Brian Branch. So you've got 4 safeties. We could really use another, well, I mean, I would say free safety just because maybe Kirby didn't have the best season last year, but he's not going anywhere. So we could use another free or a strong safety, depending on what they do with Branch. I mean, there's been some talk that Branch is going to head back to safety this year. So if they left that room alone and we entered the season with 5 safeties and, probably 6 DBs, I would say that would probably be the number. I think we entered 23 with 10, but maybe you keep 11 this year, given the injury history to a lot of these guys. Carlton, Manuel, Khalil, and then Amik and Kindle and Steven. That's your 6 DBs. If we grabbed another DB in the, or cornerback in the draft, then they're going to have to beat somebody out, right? Could be Stephen Gilmore, could be Kindle Vildor, could be Khalil Dorsey. But Khalil played great in special teams too. So I guess where I'm going at is this draft is set up very well. Very, very, very well. Ertz was a temp signing, but he's not with the Lions anymore. I forgot who he signed with. Was it Washington? Did he sign with the Commanders? He might have. I think he might have signed with the Commanders. iRegister said the Lions could use an upgrade at the left linebacking position. On the other hand, I really want Barnes to keep developing and improving. So if we look at the linebackers for a moment, at the will, you've got Alex Anzalone, Jalen Reese-Maben, Malcolm Rodriguez. I think we're good there. At the Mike linebacker, you've got Jack Campbell, who's probably going to start. So you probably have Jack, Alex Anzalone, and, I don't understand. I mean, so they're calling the rush, and they've changed the way that they're listing this defense for some reason. Like, we typically don't have a nose tackle. I mean, the 4-3, typically you see 2 defensive tackles, 2 defensive ends, but they're calling it the rush end and the defensive end and the nose tackle and the defensive tackle. We used to have 3 linebackers, Will, Sam, and Mike, and there's only 2 listed here. So I don't understand that. But Malcolm, I think, he's better suited as a middle linebacker. He's a little on the smaller side. He can play just about anywhere, though. He's got the speed to do it. Maybe just not as good in coverage. But I think the Alex Anzalone, Derek Barnes, and Jack Campbell are probably your 3 starters. I think Aiden Hutchinson, Ali McNeil, DJ Reader, and Davenport are your 4 defensive linemen. And Ifeatu Melifonwu, Kirby Joseph, Amik Robertson, Brian Branch, and Carlton Davis are obviously your starting DBs. It's a pretty good team, in my opinion. Pretty good team. Sean Rounds, did the Lions match it? Or are you speculating? Did that just come out too? Hold on here. Let's take a look. So according to Sports Illustrated here, just a few moments ago, like literally 2 minutes, they have matched it. Really unexpected, but here's the deal. When we found out that the guaranteed money was only like, was it 4.1? That's it's just like paying him $4 million for one season, because if you give him all the guaranteed money, or that amount of guaranteed money, and it's only 1 year that he plays, you could release him next year and not owe him anything. So they've really invested another $1 million into Brock Wright, is what they did. They invested an extra $1 million, because he was at 2.985. So now his guaranteed money of 4.1 or 4 point something, it wasn't that much more. It was just a little over, 1.4 million more or something like that. But to have him on the roster, keep the continuity, and you could still move off of him next year if you really wanted to, and it cost you an extra $1 million. So I think it's a good decision. Now, if they had him over 50% guaranteed, I probably wouldn't have done it. But it's good. It's a good idea to keep him around for now. But then that also means that the Lions, again, still have more versatility, right? They don't have to go and grab a tight end in the draft now. You've got Brock Wright and Sam Laporta as your main starters. James Mitchell, he's still fighting, to be relevant in this league. He hasn't done anything. Shane Zielstra coming off a nasty injury. Man, he is really starting to play well. And I know his stats don't speak to it, but he was really starting to play pretty well and really earning a lot of respect from Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, especially the way they spoke about him last year. And that was probably, like Dan Campbell said, is one of the toughest injuries to watch, in training camp. You just can't do that stuff. You've got to be smarter than that. But anyway, having those guys back, I think that, it gives this team more continuity, more opportunity and versatility this draft to do, again, whatever they want to do. And that's what we're talking about. So when we look at the offensive side of the ball, I mean, there hasn't been a ton here. Obviously, bringing back Brock Wright, big move. They felt that it was worth it to pay him, a little more than $1 million more. They could still move off of him next year. They brought in Kevin Zeitler, huge upgrade, in my opinion, over Jonah Jackson, because now Zeitler will be your right guard as expected. That's where he'll stay, is in his normal position. And Graham Glasgow will slide down to the left side. And Graham played way better than Jonah did last year. Way better. I will never understand paying Jonah Jackson $51 million. So they're probably looking at, what he could potentially be, because he has not been that guy yet. At least his grades don't speak to it. But when you look at this roster, the one thing that I wanted to mention, I was going to talk about it tonight, and we'll probably talk about it tonight again. Antoine Green. If you guys don't remember, he was Drake May's first or second target at North Carolina. And getting Antoine Green the ball deep was exactly what Drake May did. And so we have not even seen really what Antoine Green can do just yet. The guy can play fast. He can play physical. He can get vertical. And last year, Randall L. was saying that was one of Antoine Green's issues. It was effort on every play. Sometimes, he wasn't playing as fast as he would other plays, and he's got to get out and play fast. But there was a learning curve. He had to learn the offense, and it had to slow down for him. Hopefully this year it's slowed down for him enough to where he can get out and play fast, because we could see a big jump in Antoine Green's performance this year, which would be nice to have, that, option now that Josh Reynolds is gone. We really need Antoine Green to step up, because he's the tallest guy and the biggest guy we have on the wide receiver chart right now. Well, there you go. Run DMG just said Reynolds lost points to a wide receiver somewhere in the draft, unless Green is part of Brad's 3D chess piece. I would go with the latter, but I also believe that wide receiver is on the board. I really do. And I do believe that the reason why you have another wide receiver enter the room is, one, the talks between the Lions and St. Brown are not done. And if you bring in another wide receiver that can really produce, that either might speed talks up, or it could lower the cap number for St. Brown, knowing that there's another wide receiver now that could really step in and play well. But those are all speculation type subjects to talk about. What would it do to bring in another top tier receiver? Yeah, if you brought in Marvin Harrison Jr., if you brought in Brian Thomas Jr., if you brought in, somebody like that in the first round, Malik Neighbors, yeah, that totally changes the conversation. Very unlikely to happen unless the Lions move up. Lions talk with, I can't read the rest of your name, but Lions talk with something. Oh, the bad guy says we don't need 4 tight ends. Honestly, we would be better having 2 kickers, the Michigan Panther kicker and Josh Carty, Stanford kicker. Yeah, I think Green is taller than DPJ, Sean. I think he's 6'4". Here, let me look it up. I think he's 6'4". Oh, maybe 6'2". He's 6'2", listed by the Lions. And DPJ, I think, is also 6'2". Could be 6'3". Let's see here. Where's he at? Donovan Peoples-Jones. Jones is also 6'2". So they're tied for, I guess, the tallest wide receiver. I could have sworn that Antoine Green was 6'4". What happened here? Maybe that's what he was listed at UNC. They always get you at college, man. You're always an inch taller and 10 pounds heavier in college. Always. Yeah, they had him listed as like 6'3" at UNC, 6'2 and a half, 6'3", depending on which site you go to. So we have two 6'2" guys. Assuming both of them make the roster, elevator accident. assuming they both make the roster, I still think that we need a taller boundary guy. You know, I know a couple inches doesn't seem like it matters a whole lot, but there's just more that goes into it. The longer stride, hopefully somebody that has a good vertical, bigger body, wider body, longer arms. It all plays a role. But you can also be 6'2" and have an extremely wide wingspan. The wingspan is what really matters to be able to get up over top of these DBs. Like, I mean, look at some of these DBs are jumping, 42-inch verticals. It's insane. Amik Robertson is one of them. The guy can leap. So anyway, back to the offensive roster here. You got Jamison Williams, who's probably starting off as our left wide receiver. Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot. And they have Khalif Raymond as the right wide receiver, but yeah, I don't think so. I think you're going to either see either DPJ or Antoine Green really step up in when we have three wide receivers out there. But to somebody else's point about having four tight ends, this is why we need four tight ends too. One, you've got to have two on the field in certain situations, certain personnel groupings. But in some of the jumbo formations, you might have three tight ends out there. So you definitely have to have three. And that fourth one, you relegate to the practice squad. They're not going to be up on the active roster on game day. That's what having that extra tight end is for, is if you do suffer an injury, you've got somebody that you can reach down and pull up. Look, I still think the tight end's an option on the board. I just don't think that you have to do it by bringing Brock Wright back. But if you want to elevate, and upgrade over, Zielstra or James Mitchell, which I doubt that they would do, at least right now, there's always that possibility. BPA is funny, man. Best player available is it's a tough nut to crack when you're trying to figure out a draft board. Demi got 3-3. Doesn't understand the hype about DPJ. I'll take Green over him all day. He didn't do much at Michigan. The DPJ played pretty well at Michigan, didn't he? The guy's a fighter, man. He's a scrapper. That's what I love about DPJ. He is a scrapper. When you watch him, when you really watch him go after the ball and well, it would be 3 seasons ago now. No, 2 seasons ago. No, three seasons ago with Cleveland. He had like 800 yards that season. The guy was a scrapper going up and getting the ball, fighting for the 50-50 balls. He's really good in contested catches. Is Brock Bowers really an option? I don't know. I don't see Brock Bowers slipping past pick 15. I don't think the Lions are taking a tight end in the first round. I really don't see that at all. I do believe if you were to grab another tight end, it would be absolutely insanity. If you had a Theo Johnson or a Brock Bowers or somebody like that. I'm not that high on Eric All. I know that he's part of tight end U. But I just was not very high on his tape. I didn't do a video on him, but of course I watched them all, and I liked how Theo performed better than Eric All did. Yeah, Johnny Wilson, I don't see him being on the Lions board. 6'7". I understand he ran pretty well, but I mean, he could be a tight end if he put on 30 pounds. I just don't see him being a really good receiver. Yeah, I do love Tragan Kerr Studios. Theo Johnson. He's my guy for tight end. If we were to pick a tight end at all, it would be Theo Johnson. Stephon Diggs, he's gone. He's with Houston. He was traded to Houston today. And Diggs doesn't fit our room anyway. He's too much of a hothead. He didn't have good relationships with Josh Allen or the ownership. Always causing issues. So anyway, on the offensive side of the ball, is the potential there for us to add a receiver? I think so. Right now we have 9 guys on the depth chart. You've got Traquan Smith, who really is an intriguing prospect. He has the ability to really work into that 4th wide receiver role, but we'll see how he produces, in camp this year. And hopefully we get some of you guys to join me at camp. I mean, last year we had, I don't know, like 30 tickets to different days and tried to give out a lot, but I didn't have this many subscribers. So this time we'll be able to give tickets away, hopefully a little bit easier. We transfer them right to you so that you don't have to like meet us, at the door or something. But we can meet up and hang out, watch camp together. In the offensive side of the ball, again, on the offensive line, you got Taylor Decker. I believe this is his last year under contract. Dan Skipper is back. Graham Glasgow, of course, is with us for 3 seasons. Coyote Awosika, I mean, last year we read that, he was making leaps and bounds over, where he was the season before. I'm not real high on Coyote. But obviously you leave that up to, Hank Fraley. If he's got faith in the guy, I trust in Fraley, man. Fraley is by far one of the best offensive line coaches in this entire league. Matt Farniak, I think you could use an upgrade there. Kevin Zietler, starting right guard, and then Colby Sorsdahl behind him. I think Colby will be okay. He's going to be a backup forever at this point. I don't think that you're going to do anything with Colby, but I do believe that, our third guard, like our 5th and 6th guard on the roster, definitely could use an upgrade. So I'm expecting the Lions to draft an offensive guard in this draft, especially knowing that we only have Zietler for 1 season. It would really be important for us to grab someone that can learn this season, upgrade the room. Offensive linemen, we've always had trouble with. For whatever reason, we go through a lot of injuries on the offensive line. You can never have too many. In my opinion, last year we didn't enter the season with enough. And I think it showed because we were scrambling there for a minute to try to put together an offensive line. And they did well. The Lions really did well with what they could put together. I do like McCaffrey run DMG. I do. And I think that, you have that pedigree, that bloodline of his father. What he played for Denver, I believe, won a couple of Super Bowl rings. I do like Luke McCaffrey, somewhere 4th round, 5th round, but we don't have a 4th round pick yet. So we've got to get the pick first. But I do like, adding him, later on if we don't take somebody early. If the Lions look to find Taylor Decker replacement, would you still be going Decker? Would you still? If I think what you're trying to say there, Demigod, is if we're looking for Taylor Decker's replacement, would you still want that rookie to play this year? Is that what you're trying to say? Or wait to sign his replacement? So I would much rather see. I mean, if you're going to get a replacement for Decker, you're going to have to get somebody in the 1st round. That would be a replacement. But that person doesn't have to play year 1 other than backup or jumbo situations or other areas on the offensive line if needed. Having an extra guy, at pick 29, offensive lineman in the room doesn't hurt you. And you've got him for 5 seasons if you want him for 5 seasons. And to be able to learn from Decker and everybody else, I think it's a good move. But then you're looking at, you're really looking at best player available. I mean, truly, because that would not be a need at all right now. The need would be to fill the depth later in the draft for depth. But if you're looking for a starter, and that happens to be an offensive lineman in round one, that's best player available all day that's on your board. And I mean, you could see it happen. It would be the most unsexiest pick ever, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit. No, I wouldn't re-sign Decker at that point. But, I think that Decker is – I'm 50-50 on Decker. Like, he's had some moments where he's not able to really hang, with some of these guys. He's had moments. But overall, he's played great. Is he on the outside of his career now? Is he trending downward? He's got kids now. Anytime a player starts to have young kids, that's where you start to see him kind of migrate out of the league. Like they see things, like any father would, more important than the game, which is your family. And so I think that those kind of trend together. As the kids start to get a little bit older, you start to see him trend outside the NFL a little bit quicker. And for that reason, yeah, I would rather see him address the need before it becomes a problem. But you can draft an offensive lineman next year in the first round if you don't give up your first round pick this year, and you can slide him right in and start him. Matter of fact, the confidence that I have is they'll slide Penei Sewell to left tackle. As long as they extend Penei Sewell, you slide him to left tackle, then you only need a right tackle. Much easier to fill a right tackle position than it is a left tackle. Make sense? Yeah, Jeff Buckler, unsexy picks or how the Lions are relevant today. Exactly, man. Exactly. Let's see here. So, yeah, to your point, Demigod, if we didn't have Decker, who could hold down his spot, that would be Penei Sewell. Penei would move to left all day. That's the funny part about Penei's extension is, are you going to pay him as a right tackle, a left tackle, or in between? Because he plays both. And now he's been set at right tackle for the last, 3 seasons. It's a weird conversation, I bet, with the agent. Like, he's a left tackle playing right. Plays really great. One of the best at right. I mean, best overall graded right tackle in the league. But the minute Decker's gone, you can slide him to left. And then what? He's making $5-6 less or $5-6 million less per season because he was paid as a right tackle. But that's the flexibility and versatility that I love about what Brad Holmes does is he looks for players with, flexibility and versatility at multiple positions. And then he, boards them out, which one is better than the other and puts them on his big board that way. Yeah. So who would hold Sewell's position? See, that's where you would need to draft a tackle this year. Absolutely. Because we do not have a tackle right now, in my opinion, that could slide in and hold down the fort. You've got Dan Skipper, who's a swing tackle. I don't want to say that I would trust him. I don't know that I would. I think he potentially could be okay, but it would be a big drop off in production. My opinion, until I see it. We just haven't seen it, right? We haven't seen Dan Skipper really, go out there and man a tackle position for a lengthy period of time. So to your point, 313, yeah, I think that, that's where drafting a tackle this year makes sense. How would I do it? Here's how I would do it. Not that you asked or care, but I would draft a tackle this year versus a guard. And I would draft that tackle knowing you could move them to guard. It's easier to move down to guard than it is up to tackle. So if you draft a tackle and let's say you're trying to address, Zeitler or Zeitler, whatever, right guard position, you draft a right tackle. You draft a right tackle that can also play right guard. And if an issue comes with Decker slides or Penei Sewell slides to the left. Now that right tackle that you just brought in can move to right tackle and you're still good. That's how I would do it. So moving forward here, center Frank Ragnow. So this one's a bit of a concern for me. I do believe, again, we are in the best position possible coming, through this draft. This is where I'm back to, okay, we should draft a tackle that has flexibility, but now we need a guard that has flexibility, someone that can play center. We have Graham Glasgow locked up for 3 seasons. So if you see how my brain's working here, it's like, all right, we need a guard that can slide to center, but we have Graham. So we don't really need a center now because Graham can slide in. He'll be just fine. Not anywhere near as good as Ragnow, but he'll be just fine. Like, he played incredibly well. I think he had like 150 snaps at center or something like that. He played incredibly well for having to play 3 different positions. I mean, Graham knocked it out the park. So now we really don't need a center anymore. So now I'm back to draft a right tackle that can fill in at right guard. And you've got your center handled, at least for 3 seasons with Graham Glasgow. Now you need a left guard that can fill in for Graham Glasgow. That I think we could have, between Colby Sorsdahl moving over to left guard, I think is a possibility. So I think we're good there. So right tackle would be what I would focus on if I were the Lions, someone that could, move down the line if they needed to. Obviously, running back, we're solid, but I would not be afraid at all of picking up a Frank Gore or, something like that, in the 5th round. If he was still there, I would take him in a heartbeat. Make him compete with Craig Reynolds or Zonovan Knight or Jamar Jefferson. Make him compete. Make him make the roster. He's too quick, too fun to watch. Not afraid to mix it up and block. I would not be afraid at all. Obviously, quarterback, I think we're fine. We just brought back Nate Sudfeld, and that's really about it. It's a tight end. The only other one we already talked about that one. Talked about the offensive line, defensive line, all the wide receivers. So really just saying a whole lot of nothing here because like we have all the positions are pretty much set. It's just when you get to like the 3rd backup right now, or even the 2nd backup, what I mean by that is the 2nd player behind the starter or the 3rd player behind the starter. That's where we could see some major upgrades. I still think that we should target a starting defensive end, or someone that can work their way into being a starting defensive end. Like, let's not put someone's feet to the fire this year, but let's use them in spaces, and allow them to do their job and learn. That's what I look forward to this year. Out of everything else that we have going on, is watching how now this set of rookies can work into this lineup. Let's see here. Someone asked me, what would I rather like as far as pedigree, Rice or McCaffrey? I do like Brendan Rice. He's still extremely high on my list. He's over top of Xavier Legette now because Legette measured like 2 inches shorter than projected. And so that kind of killed it for me because I was hoping that he was 6'3", and he's not. He's like 6'1". So that kind of killed it for me. But I like Brendan Rice, man. I think that he's going to be an excellent wide receiver, more of a big body guy. So anyway, to start this stream off, it was Kindle Vildor coming back and how that has now painted a picture for the Detroit Lions to have an extreme amount of flexibility, being able to pick just about anybody that they want in this year's draft. The only thing is, it's not who they want. It's the best player that lands on their board that's available where they're picking. My only ask right now for the Lions, and it's a big ask because I've tried to ask them to do it every year, is somehow get us an extra pick in the meat of this draft. Right now we have 3 picks in the top 73. That's a great place to be. But when you look at like Arizona Cardinals, they've got an amazing amount of picks in the top, 106 or whatever. They got like 6 picks. They're going to have an incredible draft. The Houston Texans are going to be one of the best teams in this league this year because they had a bunch of picks last year. The Arizona Cardinals are right behind them. They're going to be probably the best team to watch this year grow from worst to first. So I would love to see the Lions do something to find us a pick between 35 and 48, somewhere in that range, so that we can find, another top tier talent that can come in and really help this depth chart. So that's my only ask. Sean Rounds, yeah, I would agree, man. Brad Holmes is going to draft at least one guy from Alabama. Which one? Well, I would hope that it's Dallas Turner. I really would, but it could be Kool-Aid McKinstry. And that's, probably the last thing I'll talk about is, what are we going to do at corner now? Because they've pretty much locked it up, and it leaves it wide open for a giant camp competition now. So are we going to add a top tier corner that, we don't have to re-sign Carlton Davis next year then to a massive contract, which is what he's going to be looking for, $15 million a year or more. We can now add a rookie this year, let him work and learn and train, underneath the starters that we have already. Hopefully Emmanuel Mosley comes back healthy and can work himself back into the roster and be a very solid backup. I don't know. I think that it would be wise to draft a corner, but we don't have enough picks. It would be wise to draft a corner at 29. It would be wise to draft a defensive end at 29. It would be wise to move up to the top 15. It would be wise to move back and, trade from 29 to 33 or 35 or 36, and then pick up, a mid-second round pick and maybe a 2025, asset. There's a lot of options. I do believe, Lone Wolf, to your point, we will grab a cornerback somewhere. And I guess that's the one thing that I'm not worried about. There's plenty of 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks that have turned out to be some of the best in the league. So, adding McLaughlin, Kamal Hayden, 2 of the guys that I really liked after watching their tape, Cam Hart. What's the other guy's name? It's not Ronaldo Green, is it? Hold on here. I can't remember his name right now. Having a brain fart. 1 second. Help me out here. Is it Ronaldo Green? I want to say that's his name. I was just watching him last night. A little bit more in depth, and really like him. I think that he is NFL ready, but his last name is escaping me right now. I think it's Green. Yeah, Renardo, not Ronaldo. Sorry, Renardo Green. So grabbing a guy like Ronaldo Green, I think, look, he's going to be off the board by 80. So if the Lions have to use pick 73 to grab somebody like him, even Max Melton, I think Max Melton you'd probably have to grab at 61 because he'll be gone by 73. Definitely be gone by the 90s. I think that Renardo Green could be one of the more NFL ready corners in this draft. That's ranked, right now he's ranked 15 on Draft Buzz's board, 15th overall defensive back. And I think he should be up somewhere in the top 6, to be honest with you, top 6, top 7. And I really believe that he's probably one of the more pro ready corners in this draft. Cam Hart, I like too. I think that Cam Hart really offers a lot of versatility. He's got great size, 6'3", 202. The only thing about Cam is he's a little handsy. So there's options, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's options. There's a lot of options in this draft and later. So I'm not afraid that, if we have to take a corner later in the draft, that we're not going to find somebody, great. The kid out of Florida State, Sean, I just was struggling with it. I had the last name right. It was the first name that I didn't have right. So anyway, J Mommy, hey, nice to see you join us. If the Lions move back a couple of spots, they could possibly pick up a 3rd round pick. Absolutely. I'd rather see him pick up a 3rd than a 4th. You know, I really don't care where you pick guys. Like, it doesn't matter one bit to me. If you take a guy that is projected in the 5th round and you take him in the 3rd, if that's your guy, that's your guy. And that's what Brad Holmes has shown us that he's going to do. So anyway, to end today's stream, I want to say that I appreciate you guys joining me today for this pop-up live. It started because Kindle Vildor got re-signed, and then the more I thought about it, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Brad Holmes is on fire. Like, he went from what many considered probably the worst offseason to now probably the best offseason we've had, just based on filling needs. And I think it was a very smart play for how they put this together to be able to enter this draft with the ability to pick anybody they want. And, you know, to end this, I'll say that, you know, this quote here by Dan Campbell says, and this is where I'm getting this from too. He says, we're the best we've been in 4 years. And we feel like, man, we've got a lot of those holes filled. So this kind of feels like the first draft. We're going in and we're still best player available. And we've got places taken care of going into the draft, which is pretty cool. I agree, Dan. It's pretty cool, man. Now surprise us in the draft and do something even cooler, like moving up to the top 15 and grabbing us a dominant defensive end. And let's go win the damn Lombardi here in 2024. I have no idea who's going to be returning punts this year. It's going to be a giant camp competition. You're going to see DPJ back there. You'll see Khalif Raymond back there. You'll see Khalil Dorsey back there. We've got lots of options. So it'll be interesting. Good camp competition. Appreciate the compliment there, Run DMG. Great stream today. And we'll see you guys back on tonight. You Lone Wolf, I will be live tonight, 8 p.m. as usual. I didn't expect for this to last an hour or whatever it's been. It was going to be a 10-minute stream, but I also didn't expect, 100 plus people to join in either. So, all right, you guys, we'll catch you back here tonight on Rock Down Detroit Lions, part of the Rock Down Podcast Network. Appreciate you guys. Go in pride. Go Detroit Lions. We'll see you guys tonight. Bye-bye.